Aaron. And thank you, Sean. No one said this was going to be easy. We've all been staying home a lot during these past months of the COVID crisis. And we've perhaps been more aware of our neighbors than New Yorkers generally are. My upstairs neighbor has been learning to play the piano. Every morning, plink, plink, plink. One day, I think I heard only the same two notes over and over. It drove me a little crazy, and I definitely admit to having some unkind thoughts. However, this past week, as I worked from home one day, I heard real music coming from above. And floating above the gentle chords and harmonies of the left hand were those two notes. A lovely obligato, fast and perfect and ethereal. It was beautiful. And I marveled at my neighbor's accomplishment. Being willing to do the work, sometimes tedious, to build that skill, my neighbor practiced and stayed with it. The result was inspiring, and I hope she's impressed with herself. When we are intentional and make conscious efforts, we're more aware. We check and monitor ourselves, and as we get better at our new practices, it's natural to become less aware. And it's when behaviors and actions become automatic that we lose our intentionality. Ember, I sympathize with what you said. My friend Wilma and I each said to each other at choir rehearsal once that we were both very, very good at sight reading because neither of us liked to practice much. We have an opportunity to practice our skills in our spiritual lives as well. Coming back to conscious practice makes it intentional again, and it renews our sense of growth and accomplishment. I'd like to share with you part of a recent posting from the Church of the Larger Fellowship newsletter from UU Minister Jordan Long. Reverend Long wrote that she had been trying out a vegetarian diet out of her personal sense of trying to live more fully within her own values and with the earth. She says, and I paraphrase, "There's a lot holding me here in this experiment, none of which dies of imperfection. So far, I suck at this vegetarian thing. The problem is pretty simple. I keep finding myself with a chorizo burrito in my hand, and oops, I did it again. I've eaten far less meat and probably more vegetables than usual, but I'm definitely failing any purity test out here. What I feel like is a work in progress, and I trust that. I trust my ability to learn and grow. I trust myself to lean toward my commitments, and I trust my body to build the muscle to do it better day by day. Our greatest growth does come in the hardest times. When we're faced with difficult challenges and choices, if we want to find our way through it whole and intact, we must become conscious of what we say and do and be intentional in our practice of our new behaviors and thought processes. We work to bridge the gap that lies between our intent and the impact our behavior has in our communication and dealings with others. We UUs ought to be good at this. It's an old joke that UUs are bad singers because we're too busy reading the next line to see if we can really say that with integrity. We are beginners again and again, conscious of what we need to learn and how it influences our thoughts about how we want to live our lives. In another example, how shall we greet each other when we are again assembled under the same roof? I don't think I'm alone in saying that shaking hands may be a social custom that we will not practice for a long time. Neither am I comfortable with a fist bump or an elbow bump. The Buddhist practice of bowing over folded hands may be an option. But we're going to go through some discomfort and missed cues and laughing, I hope, errors as we sort it all out when that day arrives. We don't do things right all the time. And when we're learning, we make mistakes. We have to say sorry to others and to ourselves and just try again. Practice, practice, practice. Practice new ways of being with others in just and equitable ways. And yes, remembering that there are many other ways to grow as a whole human being. Physical strength and stamina do not come without training. Professional experience often requires years of study and focused learning. And spiritual practices are not learned without significant attention to that inner space within which faith and hope and love abide. Lynn Unger, minister for lifespan learning at Church of the Larger Fellowship, wrote once that spiritual practice wears a kind of a groove in your brain, a habit of body and mind. And the more we practice the day-to-day exercises of body, mind, and spirit, the more likely we are to stay on that path. We're practicing what it is to be calm and quiet and centered, because so much of the time we aren't calm and quiet and centered. We practice and we feel awkward, like we're not doing it right. But if we keep at it, like building a muscle, we'll find that we don't feel so knocked down by what life throws at us. I expand on Reverend Unger's focus on spiritual practice to include how we are in our whole lives, about how our intent may be to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly, as the prophet Micah said, and how we might feel when we perceive that we have fallen short, our understanding less than perfect, our actions unsatisfactory relative to our expectations for ourselves, and our impact less than good enough in our own estimation. Then, dear ones, we need to remember the reason why we practice. And I want you to hear this very, very gently, because we are not and never will be perfect. That was very hard for me to say, full disclosure, because I've always wanted to be perfect. I once said to a psychotherapist with some degree of anger, all I want is to be perfect. Is that too much to ask? And she replied with some humor, well, yes. In the moment of deflation that followed, I realized something that has freed me to be less than perfect, to really let go, I keep trying, of perfectionism in my life. It is a Buddhist philosophy to stand in the place of the beginner every day, all the time. If I am willing to be a beginner every single morning, first, it takes away the stress of having to be an expert, of being perfect. And second, it frees me, and you too, if you choose this practice, to say with curiosity and humility, tell me what I need to know to be of help. I admit to being a work in progress. I'm still not good at this all the time, but I keep at it. And I get those moments of clarity and joy that come with peace of mind and satisfaction when I feel that I have lived, as we say, into and out of my own best self. We may get really good at some things, but the difference between being an expert and being a beginner is that the expert has failed more times than the beginner has yet tried. You will be surprised at how it frees your spirit to embrace being a beginner. There's no room for guilt or regret. You have every opportunity to try and try again. A wonderful Hindu teacher, Guru Mai Chidvilasananda, once said, if you make a mistake, then just try again. And if you make another mistake, just try again. And here she began laughing, a wonderful, joyful laugh. And if you make a mistake, just try again. All accomplishment is clouded by some manner of limitation. For us to create meaningful and joyful lives, we must not just expect ourselves to be resilient and then feel defeated or that we failed when we're tired or don't live up to what we think we should be doing, but to practice how to be resilient, to look at ourselves and our choices and to pivot into a new way of thinking. Philosopher Richard Rohr says, spirituality is about finding inner freedom. Take some time each day just to be and inhabit the integrity of your consciousness so that when the time comes, when you get it wrong, you can see it and say it and choose a different path. You are never stuck when you choose to be a beginner. You never have to hold on to what you might have thought you knew when you have learned a new lesson. You can always practice new behaviors and new ways of being. Self-righteousness is a pitfall of the inability to learn and grow and evolve in your thinking, your spiritual well-being, and in your relationships with those around you. One great benefit of practice is that we can be ready to let go of what may once have served us, but that we have now moved beyond. My mentor, George Hamza, would challenge me at this point by saying, "So what?" And he would expect me to respond with a comment that began, "So that." And so I say to you, so that when you look back on these days, you can say to yourself, I have lived through this hard time, and came away with knowledge of how to live through hard times. Your intentionality, your consciousness of your accomplishment and of the good that it has done for you and for those you love will serve you all the rest of your life. Take baby steps and try again. Practice, practice, practice. And then when Carnegie Hall reopens, it's at 57th Street and 7th Avenue, by the way. It's about 12 blocks that away. Join me in appreciation of what it takes to get to that stage. Isaac Stern once said, if I don't practice for one day, I know it. If I don't practice for 2 days, my wife knows it. And if I don't practice for 3 days, my audience knows it. Practice a bit every day. Build your spiritual muscles for the joy of the practice and be ready for when the challenging days come. It's during those times that you will appreciate the effects of your practice, not in what you do, so much as in knowing that you have a choice of what to do. Resilience is learnable. Pivot in your focus and try another way. Find your meaning and purpose with curiosity and the centered strength that practice develops inside your feeling heart, your compassionate mind, and your whole and beautiful spirit. Blessed be, may it be so in this and in all worlds.